Hello everybody, and welcome back to the KingFox channel. My name is Matt Conacher, and I'm building a KitFox Model 7
STI.
In this episode, I'm going to be taking you through the errors that I made on the adjustable rudder pedals and the rudder pedals. I'm basically going to just reference the instructions, show you where I made the mistakes, and hopefully you too won't make the same mistakes I did, because I didn't really think it was easy to spot anyway, otherwise I wouldn't have made the mistake, and I think it cost me $170 some. So I'll get you the exact prices and the quote. And anyway, the parts are on order, and hopefully they'll be here soon. I got the tracking numbers from KitFox, so I'm going to show you the assembly and where I made my mistakes. So let's get into the video. Okay, so on page 44, basically if you don't have any of the prefab kit stuff, this is where you're going to start to fabricate your inboard brackets and anything else that you may not have pre-purchased. I purchased all of this stuff here as a kit, and I think it's well worth it in my mind, because for someone else to CNC those parts out of a billeted piece of aluminum and get it to me. So those are the things that you're going to start with. You're going to ream and do that type of stuff, pilot drill through outboard rudder pedals, etc., etc. And then as you get down into here where you're, if you've got the adjustable rudder pedals, you're going to go to Appendix A, Figure A, which is on page 84. Alright, and the instructions up here is shortening the pedal horns, which I didn't have to do because they were already shortened. And what that's referring to is this thing right here. I guess maybe in some of them that don't have the adjustable rudder pedals, perhaps the horn is longer. So I did not have to shave this off. That's why it's crossed out here, because I didn't have to do it. So fabricate 4 return straps for anti-derail guards for the pulleys. Now, this is something you actually have to do because they don't make them for you. So you get 2 half-inch by 10-inch pieces of metal. I would recommend cutting them directly in half and not doing any measuring and trying to make them tighter, because that's what I did. I cut them at 4.5 inches each, and it was too short. So I cut the second one in half, and they were perfect. Over here, what you're doing, you see that the center of your hole is basically 1/4 inch. Center is 1/4 inch from the end of the material. I'm sorry, 3/8 of an inch from the end, and you're drilling a 1/4 inch hole. That was, again, one part where I made my mistake. I thought I could be closer to that, and it didn't. The results weren't what I expected, and that's why I have an extra piece left over. So I ended up sourcing this from a welding shop here in town, and I was pretty happy that they actually had it. But you're gonna make your brackets, and someone told me not to make a 90-degree. You're making a 90-degree bend, but don't make it square. Make it round. If you can put a little radius on there, and of course that takes up a little bit more material. So a square edge in stainless has a tendency to vibrate and crack. Was the reasoning that I was told not to do that. So I tried the best of my ability to make a smaller radius on the bends, and then. So looking at the picture here, the bolt, we got forward here. So this is obviously on the pilot side of the aircraft. So it only shows me one pulley. I assumed, as I shouldn't have, that both bolts went in this direction. So therefore I had 2 bolts. Well, I had the end of a bolt butting up against the head of a bolt, and they should be head to head opposing. One head goes that way, one head goes this way, and that allows you to keep your rudder pedals closer together. And I will show you that. So there you can see the tight tolerance between the 2 pulleys. And this is the proper way to do it. And I thought initially, like I said, I had this side of the bolt going in this direction. Can't really see really well. Basically, they were both facing this direction. So you can see that I would have had more space between the pulleys. Now what that did was, on this pulley set, I ended up having about 1/2 inch extra, and on this pulley set, the same. You can see that I've turned these 2 around already. I haven't retorqued them, and I haven't put my bolt paint on there yet. But what that did was, that kept space in between this bushing and this bushing. So I could physically move this way and move this with it, and it would give me my 32nds of an inch gap over here and here. However, I didn't have much bearing on this end bearing surface, and I thought, how am I gonna, how do I get more? I thought, well, nothing really in the instructions says how to reduce that. So I went ahead and drilled out my holes, and I riveted. And once I did that, then I was committed. And I did that on both sides. So I did them the same. And then once I brought it over here and set it in the aircraft, I've got my centers. Underneath here is a piece of metal, you can see, so that's what you're going to drill into. So my center is here, but when I set my rudder pedal piece up on here, once you get yourself 2 7/16 of an inch from the edge, basically you're in about this configuration, and you can see that I'm well outside of the area. So at 2 7/16 of an inch from the front tube, right there, I'm on it. So you can see where my brackets fall, and I am outside of the center of this piece. So I thought maybe I could just cut a 1/4 inch off this tube and a 1/4 inch off this tube. So I wrote to Brandon, and he said no, basically can't. Well, he wouldn't recommend it. Could I do it? Sure, but he doesn't want me to have this much slop in, because basically what's going to happen right now is this rudder pedal can move, you know, that far left and right, and that's sloppy. I also don't have a lot of bearing on this outer bushing out here. That being said, I needed this torque tube, which technically connects to this pedal now. So I'm going to have to drill out these rivets. There's 12 rivets per side. I'm going to have to drill those out on both sides. So I had to order 12 rivets, 24 total, 2 torque tubes, which fortunately they had in stock and powder coated. So I was very lucky there. And any other parts? I think that's it. Oh, since I was taking the pulleys off, basically what happened is as soon as I took the nut off and the washer hit the ground and went scurrying someplace, and I couldn't find it. So they're small and thin and very dainty, and I thought it would be easy to find, but I couldn't find it, so I had to order another one. So if you got to take them off, be careful, because I don't know if they're found anywhere else in the kit. So now back to the instructions. Okay, so again, I made the 2 pulleys. I assumed that both bolts went in the same direction, and I left it at that. Once I had my pieces fabricated, I came over here, and it says, install the pulleys and straps with the hardware called out in the drawing. Torque the nut to 30 to 40 inch-pounds. Adjust the orientation of the bolt so that the hole in the shank is vertical to facilitate the installation of the return springs. And what they're talking about is in this bolt, there's a hole, and when you push it through, you want it to go vertical because you're going to attach a spring to that bolt head, and then it's going to go down to one of these tabs right here, basically from there down to here, and that's going to pull your pulley back, or at least keep some resistance on there. So now back to page 45 or 4. So in here, here's an example of something I'm talking about. Pilot side. Okay, one bolt goes through the pedals, and goes through the other pedal in the exact same direction. So again, now that I'm looking here though, I do see that this bolt is going through in this direction, and this bolt is going through in the opposite direction. So there's something that I overlooked. So pay attention to the details, because sometimes it's not completely spelled out for you, and maybe I was a bonehead, or maybe it was late and I didn't see that. But the only other issue that I'm running into right now with the rudder pedals is these bushings that go in through the top of this T-post, I call it. I have them, they go through there very nicely. I can push them through, I can pull them back. I have them lubricated. I lubricated the bolt that goes through the bearing. Once I torque it to 20, it says 20 to 25 inch-pounds. So I torqued it to the minimum. And when I do that, to turn that pedal, I can show you here, but something's going to tip over. To turn this pedal takes a lot of force, and I think that they should turn easier. I told Brandon I think when you lift it up like this, it should almost fall down. But it definitely doesn't do that. And the more well, this one's actually a little bit looser. But these two on the other side are difficult. And I mean, they're definitely not going to fall down. And I have my bushings out past the pedal, so I had to file these down, which you saw in that last video. And that's not fun. I'd never filed anything down before, and you had to take almost a 1/4 inch off that, because if not, when I was putting the bushing in and I tried to put the pedal on, I had to separate the pedal, and it distorted the pedal just to get the bolt through there. So I thought the pedal should be not expanded, but it still needed to fit over the bushing. So I filed them all down, and I don't know if I can get some different bushing material or something to go in there, something that won't expand, but I believe when I tighten it up that it compresses the plastic a little bit and squeezes it inside this tube and causes friction, because to me it shouldn't turn that difficult. But anyway, that's what I'm running into. So I got the centerpiece drilled out. I did that the other day, and it helps to have good sharp drill bits. I got some cheap bits I bought on Amazon just because they were millimeter instead, so I don't have to go over and do the conversion all the time, but they suck. So when I get my new torque tubes in, I'll drill these rivets out, I'll pull the pedal off, I'll have to sand the tube because the tube goes through this tube and the tolerances are pretty tight, so you have to sand a lot, and then Scotch-Brite it up, lubricate it, put it back in here, and I'll re-rivet. I'll have to re-drill it out using these holes, but I will take up this slack. And then I'll show you down here. Okay, so looking here, you can see that this gap is about that distance, and this is the bushing that it sits on the end. There's a grease mark right about here. Looks like I should have another cup of coffee. So that's how much is riding on the inside of this torque tube, inside this tube. So if I were to remove these rivets, slide this tube up against this bushing, that is then going to allow this torque tube to sit completely on top of this bearing. And it's the same way on both sides. So that is my failure, and that's where I made my mistake, and I don't want anybody else to make that same mistake. So in case people read the directions better than I do and they don't make those mistakes, this won't happen to you. But in the event you sometimes don't see all the little details, maybe this will stick in your mind and you won't make the same mistake. So that's going to wrap up today's episode. I'm just a quick on what not to do to mess things up. And I'd like to see, I'm thinking my pieces should be here by Monday. So I'll check the tracking numbers shortly, and these will obviously be the springs that go in from the tabs to the pedals. That's another thing that should have helped key me in, is that this tab pretty much lines up with this bolt, and this one lines up with that bolt. Darn it. So yeah, that's going to be it for today's episode. So thanks for coming back, and again, I hope this helps you not make the same mistake I made. So you guys have a good day, and we'll see you on the next one.